Years and years ago, 10 years after my undergrad, my university roommates decided we were going to have a reunion. We decided we'd go to Southern California for a week of surf school. So when I signed in the dotted line, this was the picture that was in my mind. The picture of reality was much different. I'll share that tonight, but for now. But what was fascinating at surf school was the very first morning, our instructor had us hold onto our boards and line up on the water side, and he said, okay, don't go in yet. He said, you think you know how this works. You're going to fight the waves, get to a good wave, ride it in. But he said, if the waves are always bringing the water in, how does it get back out? Everyone kind of looked at each other silently. He's like, think about it. If waves are always bringing water in, where does it go? And his big idea was this idea of a riptide or a rip current. Something that I'd heard of, but I didn't really know how it worked. And he said, yeah, that water's got to go somewhere, so it kind of eddies and pools, and it forms a river that flows perpendicular to shore. Literally flows right out into the ocean. And he said, I'm telling you this now because if you get in a riptide, it's going to go against everything you're used to. And what he said happened to me just once, but it was everything I needed to know that I wanted to avoid riptides at all costs. You're going to be swimming out to a good wave, you're going to put your head up, and you're going to be 2 or 3 times further out than you thought you'd be. And when that happens, everything in you is going to want to paddle to shore. But you can't beat a riptide. In fact, the harder you paddle towards where you want to go, the quicker you'll tire and go in the exact opposite direction. He said, these kill people. And after getting just a taste of one, I thought, okay, for the rest of the week, I'm going to learn how to surf, but more than that, I'm going to avoid riptides. So every morning I would arrive and I would kind of study the currents, and I would get as far away as I could from anything that resembled a riptide. But the other thing I noticed was the legit surfers would show up about the same time. And they'd be doing the exact same thing. They'd be studying, looking for riptides, but they weren't looking to avoid them. They were actually looking to embrace them. What I started to pay attention to is I'd be getting, fighting to get a good wave. They'd ride riptides out like an escalator and then pop off, and they'd be on their 5th or 6th wave by the time I finally got to one. They took something that I feared and avoided, and they leveraged it for fun, for play, for mastery. And the same phenomenon is really the big idea of healthy tension. We started by saying, I say tension, you think what? And most of us thought tension's bad. And as a result, because we think tension's bad, we avoid it or we ignore it. When we do that, however, with these tensions, even though our intent is good, by avoiding or ignoring, we actually are going further and further in the opposite direction of some of the very values we're trying to achieve. And I've seen the inability to navigate tension derail leaders' careers. I've seen it blow up teams. I've seen it really destroy relationships. I've also, though, had the privilege of working with lots of professionals, lots of teams who continue to solve problems well. That's like the waves. They know how to ride those, but they've also leaned into tension. And I'll tell you, if you have the ability to continue to be a great problem solver and complement that with the ability to identify and manage tension effectively, it is just a massive competitive edge. Right now in our culture, it's becoming a lost art. And yet it's the very thing that can allow us to really live out a lot of these goals and objectives that we don't want to just talk about. We just want to make sure we're delivering on.